The replacement valve was supposed to be in Storage Bay 12. Danny Reeves had asked 3 different people, and all 3 had pointed him toward the same corridor. None of them mentioned that the corridor led through a sacred hall where alien warriors were fighting for the right to marry a princess. Danny was covered in engine grease. His jacket had a tear in the sleeve. He had not slept properly in 2 days because his ship's cooling system kept making a sound like a dying animal. All he wanted was a small metal valve so he could fix the problem and get back to hauling cargo across the galaxy. Instead, he pushed open an ornate door and walked into what looked like a very serious ceremony. The hall was massive. Hundreds of Kelvari sat in tiered seats, all of them tall and blue-gray skinned, all of them with 4 arms. At the center of the room stood a raised platform where a female Kelvari waited. She was perhaps 7 feet tall, dressed in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the lights. Her expression suggested she would rather be anywhere else than in front of her. A male Kelvari was speaking very loudly about his many victories in battle. Danny stopped just inside the door. His brain told him to leave quietly. His feet did not get the message. The male Kelvari raised all 4 of his arms dramatically. I am Dren of House Velkath. I have slain 40 enemies in single combat. Any who wish to claim Rena Kosveth must first prove themselves worthy by defeating me. He struck a pose that involved flexing all 4 arms at once. Danny laughed that it was not a quiet laugh. It echoed through the silent hall. Every head turned toward the small human standing by the door, covered in grease, grinning at what he assumed was some kind of theatrical performance. Sorry, Danny said, waving a hand. I thought this was a comedy show. With the flexing and the whole defeat me first thing. Very dramatic. Really committed to the bit. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Danny had ever heard. The female Kelvari on the platform, Rena, stared at him with an expression he could not read. Dren's face twisted with rage. An elderly Kelvari in ceremonial robes rose slowly from her seat, her eyes wide. Human, Dren snarled. You dare mock a sacred challenge. Danny's smile faded as he realized several important things at once. This was not a play. These people were very serious, and everyone was looking at him like he had just committed a terrible crime. Look, he said, I'm just trying to find Storage Bay 12. Wrong door. My mistake. I'll just seize him. A booming voice cut through the hall. A massive Kelvari male in black and gold armor stood from a throne-like seat. His eyes burned with fury. This creature has insulted my daughter's ceremony. He will pay with his life. Guards began moving toward Danny. He considered running. He was fast for a human, but these aliens had legs twice as long as his. Wait. The elderly Kelvari's voice was calm, but carried easily through the hall. She walked slowly toward the center of the room, her 4 hands clasped together. High Marshal Torvek, the law is clear on this matter. Elder Yasa, Torvek growled. This human has mocked a formal challenge, Yasa finished. Yes, under the ancient codes, mockery of a declared challenge is itself a declaration of challenge. She turned to look at Danny with something that might have been amusement. This human has just announced his intention to fight for your daughter's hand. Danny blinked. I did what now? Dren laughed, a harsh and ugly sound. This soft little creature? He wishes to challenge me. He walked toward Danny, towering over him by more than 2 feet. I will crush him like an insect. The challenge has been made, Yasa said firmly. Sacred law demands it be answered. The human will be given 3 days to prepare. If he refuses to fight, or if he loses, his life is forfeit for the insult. Danny looked up at Dren, then at the guards surrounding him, then at the hundreds of 4-armed warriors watching from the seats. Finally, his eyes found Rena on her platform. She was not laughing at him. She was not looking at him with pity either. Her expression held something like curiosity, as if he were a puzzle she had not expected to encounter. So, Danny said slowly, just to make sure I understand, I can either fight this guy, or I can die for making a joke. Correct, Yasa said, and if I somehow win, I get to marry her. He pointed at Rena. You would earn the right to court her, yes. Danny rubbed the back of his neck, leaving a smear of engine grease. His co-pilot Bryn was going to lose his mind when he heard about this. The small, furry alien worried about everything, and this was definitely worth worrying about. But Danny had never been good at backing down. It was a character flaw his mother had warned him about many times. "All right," he said. 3 days to prepare for a fight against a 7-foot alien warrior with 4 arms. He shrugged. "I've had worse weeks." Rena Kosveth, who had not smiled in months, felt the corner of her mouth twitch upward. This human was either very brave or very stupid. Possibly both. Either way, the next 3 days had just become much more interesting than she expected. Bryn paced back and forth across the small guest quarters, his 6 legs clicking nervously against the metal floor. His fur stood up in patches, the way it always did when he was stressed, which was often. "You challenged a Kelvari noble to single combat," he said for the 5th time. "For marriage rights. To a princess." Danny sat on the narrow bed, holding a cold pack against his head. "I didn't challenge anyone. I laughed at the wrong time." "That's worse. That's so much worse." Bryn's small hands waved frantically. "Dren has killed 40 people in duels." 40? "You box recreationally and once beat up a drunk Torlian. To be fair, that Torlian was pretty big. He was missing an arm, Danny." Danny sighed and leaned back against the wall. The guest quarters were comfortable enough, but the locked door reminded him this was really a polite prison. Through the small window, he could see ships coming and going from the station's docking bays. His own ship sat waiting, half repaired, probably wondering why its pilot had gotten himself into this mess. "Tell me about Kelvari fighting styles," Danny said. Bryn stopped pacing. "What?" "The fight. I need to know what I'm dealing with." His co-pilot stared at him with wide, wet eyes. "You're actually going to do this. You're actually going to fight him. The alternative is dying for an insult. At least this way, I have a chance." "You don't have a chance. That's what I'm trying to tell you." Bryn pulled up data on his personal screen, scrolling through information with trembling fingers. Kelvari warriors train from childhood. Their 4-arm combat style is designed to overwhelm opponents with attacks from multiple angles. Human military assessments rate a single Kelvari warrior as equal to 3 trained human soldiers. So I need to fight smart, not hard. You need to not fight at all. A knock at the door interrupted them. The lock clicked, and the door slid open to reveal Rena Kosveth standing in the corridor. She had changed from her ceremonial armor into simpler clothing, but she still towered over both of them. Bryn made a squeaking sound and hid behind Danny. "May I enter?" Rena asked. Danny gestured to the room. "It's not like I can stop you." She stepped inside, and the door closed behind her. For a long moment, she simply studied him, her 4 arms folded across her chest in pairs. "You confuse me," she said finally. "I get that a lot. You could apologize. Accept exile. You would be hunted across 3 systems, but you would have a chance to survive." Danny nodded slowly. "Yeah, I heard about that option. Being hunted for sport didn't really appeal to me. Figured I'd try the fighting route first." "You truly believe you could defeat Dren?" "I truly believe I'd rather go down swinging than running." Rena's expression shifted slightly. She unfolded her lower arms and let them hang at her sides. "Why did you laugh?" "In the hall." Danny shrugged. He was being ridiculous. All that flexing and boasting. "Where I come from, people who act like that usually get laughed at. And where you come from, do people often stumble in sacred ceremonies covered in engine grease?" "More often than you'd think." Something that might have been amusement flickered across Rena's face. She moved to the window and looked out at the stars. "I have won 47 formal challenges," she said quietly. "Every suitor who has come from my hand has seen me as a trophy, a political advantage. None of them have ever asked what I want." Danny watched her profile against the starlight. "What do you want?" She turned to look at him, and for a moment her composure cracked. Surprise showed through, quickly hidden. "No one has asked me that in a very long time." Seems like an obvious question. Not to the Kelvari. She was quiet for several seconds. "I want to be seen as myself. Not as my father's daughter. Not as a prize to be won. Just myself." "That sounds lonely." Rena did not respond. She did not know how to respond to such simple human empathy. She moved toward the door, then paused. "Dren favors attacks to the lower left. It is where most species are weakest. When he commits to a combination, that is his blind spot. Danny straightened. Why are you telling me this? Rena looked back at him over her shoulder. All four of her hands were perfectly still, which somehow made her seem more real than she had before. Because you made me laugh, she said. No one has done that in a very long time. The door opened, and she was gone. Bryn emerged from behind Danny, his fur slowly settling back down. What just happened? Danny stared at the closed door. I think the princess just gave me a fighting chance. One tip about blind spots is not going to help you against four arms. Maybe not. Danny stood up and rolled his shoulders. But it's more than I had 5 minutes ago. Now help me figure out what weapons I'm allowed to choose for the first round. Bryn groaned and began searching through the challenge rules. Danny kept looking at the door, thinking about a 7-foot warrior princess who just wanted someone to see her. He was probably going to die in 3 days. But at least now, he had something worth fighting for. 300 Kelvari filled the arena seats. Their murmuring voices created a low rumble that reminded Danny of distant thunder. None of them expected to see a real fight. They had come to watch an execution with extra steps. Danny stood at the edge of the combat ring, wearing borrowed fighting clothes that did not quite fit. His arms felt too short. His legs felt too slow. Everything about this moment screamed at him to run, but he stayed anyway. Drin entered from the opposite side, and the crowd cheered. The warrior raised all 4 arms in greeting, soaking in their admiration. His body was covered in old scars, proof of his many victories. He looked at Danny the way someone might look at an insect that had wandered into their path. Little human, Drin called across the ring. Are you ready to die? Danny rolled his neck, loosening the tension in his shoulders. Are you ready to stop talking? The crowd laughed. Even Drin smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. Elder Yasa stepped into the center of the ring. Her voice carried easily through the arena. The challenge will be fought in 3 rounds. First blood, submission, or death. The challenger chooses the weapon for round 1. She turned to Danny. Human, what is your choice? Danny had spent 2 days thinking about this. He could not match Drin's strength or his speed. He could not overcome 4 arms with 2. But maybe, just maybe, he could outlast him. Wooden training staves, Danny said. The crowd murmured in confusion. Staves were training weapons, meant for children learning to fight. They favored reach and multiple striking angles, exactly the advantages a Kelvari warrior already possessed. Drin laughed openly. You choose a weapon that plays to my strengths? Perhaps you wish to die quickly after all. Danny accepted his staff from an attendant. It was solid wood about 5 feet long, balanced well in his hands. Maybe, or maybe I just like the classics. Yasa raised her hand. Begin. Drin surged forward immediately. His 4 arms spun the staff in complex patterns, creating a wall of movement that seemed impossible to penetrate. It would cut through the air with whistling sounds, each strike carrying enough force to shatter bone. Danny did not try to block. He moved. Footwork had always been his strength in boxing. Stay light, stay mobile. Never let your opponent set his feet. He circled left, then right, always just outside Drin's reach. When the Kelvari committed to a combination, Danny was already somewhere else. The crowd's laughter faded. Drin pressed harder, chasing the human around the ring. His staff strikes came faster, more furious. Twice he caught Danny with glancing blows that would leave bruises. But nothing solid landed. Nothing decisive. Stand still. Drin roared. Face me like a warrior. I am facing you, Danny said, breathing hard. You're just not catching me. Minutes passed. Drin's attacks grew wilder as frustration took hold. The crowd had gone silent now, watching something they had never expected to see. The human was still standing. The human was still moving. Danny counted the patterns. Left upper, left lower, right upper, right lower, repeat. Every time Drin committed fully, his lower left side opened for just a moment. Ren had been right that he needed one good opening. Just one. Drin launched his most powerful combination yet. All 4 arms working together, the staff becoming a blur of motion. Danny saw the pattern, saw the opening coming. He stepped into the attack instead of away. Pain exploded through his shoulder as Drin's staff connected. Something cracked, maybe bone, Maybe just the sound of wood against flesh. Danny felt himself spinning, losing balance. But his own staff was already moving that he drove the end of it into Dren's exposed left side, right below the ribs. The Kelvari grunted in shock. Blue-gray blood appeared where the wood had split skin. First blood that Yas's voice cut through the silence. First blood to the challenger. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. Then Dren looked down at the wound on his side, small but undeniable. He looked back at Danny, who stood swaying with one shoulder hanging wrong. You. Dren seemed unable to find words. Danny smiled despite the pain. Told you to stop talking. The crowd erupted. Not in cheers exactly, but in shock and disbelief. A human had drawn first blood against a Kelvari noble. Many of them had lived for centuries without seeing such a thing that in the seats reserved for the Kosveth family. Rena sat perfectly still. Her secondary hands gripped the armrests of her chair hard enough to bend metal. Her primary hands lay flat on her thighs, trembling slightly. Her father noticed. He said nothing, but his eyes narrowed. Danny walked back to his corner of the ring. His shoulder screamed with every step. Bryn was there, practically vibrating with anxiety. Your shoulder is fractured, Bryn hissed. You need medical attention. You need to yield. Can't yield, Danny said through gritted teeth. Not yet. Round 2, Dren chooses the weapon. He'll pick something that will kill you instantly. Probably. Danny accepted a cup of water and drank deeply. But I didn't come this far to quit now. Across the ring, Dren was no longer smiling. The playful cruelty had vanished from his face, replaced by cold determination. He spoke quietly with an attendant, then turned to face Danny. Round 2, Dren announced. I choose traditional Kelvari fighting blades. He paused, letting the words sink in. 4 of them. The crowd stirred. Those blades required decades of training to master. The human would not even know how to hold them properly. Danny looked at the curved weapons being brought into the ring. Then he looked at Rena, high in the stands, watching him with an expression he could not read. Well, he said to no one in particular, this is going to hurt. The Kelvari fighting blades were crescent-shaped, with handles designed for 4-fingered hands. Danny held 2 of them awkwardly, trying to find a grip that felt natural. Nothing felt natural. The weapons wanted to slip and twist in ways his hands could not follow. Dren held all 4 blades like extensions of his arms. He moved them in slow patterns, letting the light catch the edges. Each blade was sharp enough to cut through bone. Last chance, human, Dren said. Yield now, and I will make your death quick. Danny shifted his weight from foot to foot, testing his damaged shoulder. The pain was constant now, a deep throb that made his left arm nearly useless. He could not grip properly. He could not strike effectively. His only option was to survive. I appreciate the offer, Danny said, but I've never been good at quitting. Yasa raised her hand. Begin. Dren attacked like a storm. His 4 blades created overlapping arcs of silver, each one seeking Danny's flesh. There was no pattern to exploit this time, no rhythm to learn. Only chaos and death moving toward him at impossible speed. Danny did not try to fight back. He used his blades as shields, catching strikes and deflecting them away from his body. Boxing guards, that was all they were now. Protection, not weapons. The first cut opened his forearm. The second sliced across his thigh. The third caught his side, drawing a line of fire below his ribs. The crowd watched in silence as the human bled, but Danny kept moving. Cut after cut landed, and still he refused to fall. His body was meant for endurance, built by millions of years of evolution for exactly this kind of punishment. Humans had once chased prey across endless plains until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. They could keep going long after other species gave up. Dren's attacks grew more vicious. Why would this creature not die? He had opened wounds that would have finished any other opponent. Yet the human stood there, bleeding from a dozen cuts, still blocking, still moving, still refusing to accept the obvious. Fall, Dren shouted. You should have fallen already. Danny's vision was starting to blur. Blood loss was making him slow, making his thoughts thick and heavy. But somewhere beneath the pain, anger was building. He had come too far. He had survived too much. He would not let this end lying on the ground. Humans are stubborn, Danny gasped. Didn't anyone tell you? He stopped retreating. He stopped playing defense. Drin's next attack came for his neck, a killing blow meant to end this fight forever. Danny blocked it with his right blade, felt the impact travel up his arm like an electric shock, and stepped forward. Inside the reach of 4 arms, that IT was a terrible place to be. Drin's blades were everywhere, cutting him from angles he could not see. But at this distance, those same 4 arms got in each other's way. They could not all swing freely. They could not all find their targets. Danny dropped his left blade. He grabbed Drin's closest wrist with his bleeding hand and held on. His right blade came up, not in a slash, but a punch. The handle struck Drin's face with a crack that echoed through the arena. Drin staggered backward, blue blood flowing from his nose. Second blood, Danny fell to one knee. He was barely conscious now, running on nothing but willpower and spite. The arena spun around him in lazy circles. Round ends. Yasa called. Both combatants have drawn blood. The round is a draw. The crowd stirred, uncertain how to react. The human should be dead. The human was clearly dying. But somehow, impossibly, he had survived. Drin touched his broken nose and stared at the blood on his fingers. His expression had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. You should not still be alive, he said. Danny laughed, which hurt more than anything else had. You should hit harder. Medical attendants rushed into the ring. They patched Danny's wounds with spray-on sealant, stopping the bleeding but not fixing the damage. His body was held together with chemicals and stubbornness now. Bryn appeared at his side, tears streaming down his furry face. Danny, please. You prove your point. Everyone saw. You can yield with honor. What happens if I yield? You live. You go free. The insult is considered answered. Danny looked across the ring at Drin, who was having his own wounds treated. Then he looked up at the stands, where Rena sat watching with both sets of hands pressed flat against her legs. No, Danny said. What do you mean, no? No. I'm not yielding. You'll die. The third round is unarmed combat. 4 arms against 2. You can barely stand. Danny pulled himself to his feet. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest. His vision was still blurry. His left arm hung uselessly at his side. Maybe, he said, but I didn't come here looking for a valve anymore. Bryn stared at him in confusion. What are you talking about? Danny did not answer. He walked back to the center of the ring, where Drin was waiting. The Kelvari warrior looked at him with something that might have been curiosity. Why do you continue? You cannot win. Danny smiled through cracked lips. Guess we'll find out. High Marshal Torvek leaned forward in his seat. His daughter had not moved since the round began. She had not blinked. She watched the bleeding human with an intensity that troubled him deeply. Something had changed. He did not know what, but he knew it would cause problems. Yasa stepped forward for the final time. Round 3. Unalmed Kumba. Until submission or death. The arena fell silent. Danny raised his fists, ignoring the blood that dripped from his knuckles. Drin spread all 4 arms wide, ready to end this at last. This was it. Everything came down to this. Danny had lost count of how much blood he had spilled on the arena floor. Enough to make him dizzy. Enough to make the world feel distant and unreal. But not enough to make him stop. Drin circled him slowly, all 4 arms ready. The Kelvari warrior was not rushing this time. He had learned that the human was dangerous when underestimated. You have earned my respect, Drin said. Few opponents have survived this long. Fewer still have drawn my blood twice. Danny swayed slightly, but kept his guard up. Is this the part where you offer to let me surrender again? No, this is the part where I finish you. Drin charged. 4 arms came at Danny from multiple angles, fists and elbows and open palms, all seeking to crush and break. There was no defense against this. No human could block attacks from 4 directions at once. So Danny did not try to block. He went forward. It was the last thing Drin expected. Instead of retreating, the wounded human dove inside his reach, wrapping both arms around his torso. Danny's weight hit him low, below his center of gravity, They went down together on the ground. Everything changed. Kelvari fighting styles were designed for standing combat, where forearms provided overwhelming advantage. But wrestling was different. On the floor, tangled together, those extra limbs became obstacles. They got in each other's way. They could not find leverage. Danny knew the ground. Humans had been grappling since before they could speak, developing holds and locks and chokes that worked against bigger and stronger opponents. This was where size mattered less than technique. Drin thrashed wildly, trying to throw the human off. All four hands clawed at Danny's back, tearing skin and opening new wounds. The pain was incredible, but Danny held on. He had to hold on. "Get off me," Drin roared. Danny worked his way around to Drin's back. His arms were too short to choke a Kelvari from the front, but from behind he could reach. He wrapped one arm under Drin's chin and the other over the top of his head. The classic rear naked choke, taught in gyms across Earth for centuries, that he squeezed. Drin's forearms pulled at him desperately. Fingers dug into Danny's flesh, ripping and tearing. Blood flowed freely. But the choke was locked in now, and Danny's arms would not let go. Seconds passed. Drin's struggles grew weaker. His lungs could not get air. His brain could not get blood. His body began to understand that it was dying. "Yield," Danny gasped in his ear. "Just yield." Drin's hands stopped clawing. They pressed flat against the ground instead, the universal signal of surrender. "I yield." The words came out strangled, barely audible. "I yield." Danny released the choke and rolled away. He lay on his back, staring at the distant ceiling, unable to move. His entire body was a single mass of pain. He was not sure he could stand up, even if he wanted to. Yas's voice rang out across the silent arena. "The challenger yields. The human is victorious." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Elder Yasa began to clap her secondary hands together, a slow rhythm that echoed through the hall. Others joined her, not cheering exactly, but acknowledgement. Respect that a human had defeated a Kelvari warrior in single combat. It had never happened before in recorded history. Danny tried to sit up and failed. He tried again and managed to prop himself on one elbow. The arena was spinning badly now. Then Rena was there. She had left her seat and crossed the arena floor without caring who saw. She knelt beside him, her four hands hovering over his wounds as if afraid to touch him. "You foolish creature," she said softly. "You nearly died." Danny looked up at her face, framed by the arena lights like a halo. "Did I win?" "Yes." "Good." He let his head fall back. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means you have earned the right to court me." She hesitated. "If you still want to." Danny laughed, then immediately regretted it as pain shot through his chest. "I don't even know your favorite color." Rena stared at him. Of all the things he could have said, she had not expected that. "Blue," she heard herself say. "Like human oceans." Never seen one of those in person. Danny's eyes were starting to close. "Maybe you could show me sometime." Medical teams arrived with stretchers and equipment. They loaded Danny carefully, treating him like fragile cargo. Rena followed alongside, ignoring the whispers and stares from the crowd. Her father intercepted her at the arena exit. "Rena, what are you doing?" She met his eyes without flinching. "Following the law, father." He won the challenge. He has rights now. He is human. Yes, he is. She pushed past him, her lower hands brushing against the stretcher where Danny lay unconscious. "And he's the first suitor who has ever made me laugh." Torvek watched his daughter walk away. He had seen her fight 100 battles without showing emotion. He had never seen her look at anyone the way she looked at that bleeding human. This was going to be a problem. But deep beneath his anger, in a place he would never admit existed, he felt something else. Something like pride that his daughter had finally found someone worth caring about. Even if that someone was a strange little creature from a strange little planet who could not even hold a proper blade. 2 weeks passed before Danny could walk without help. 3 weeks before he could lift his arms above his head. A month before the medical staff stopped looking at him like he might collapse at any moment. Bryn visited every day, bringing news from the station and complaints about having to maintain the ship alone. "The cooling system is working now," he reported. "I found the valve we needed. It was in Storage Bay 11, not 12. Danny laughed from his recovery bed. All this because someone gave me wrong directions. All this because you have no sense of self-preservation. The Kelvari treated Danny differently now. Not with warmth exactly, but with a cautious respect. He had done something impossible. They did not know how to feel about that. Rena visited every evening. They talked about small things at first. Her childhood training. His family back on Earth. The differences between human and Kelvari food, which mostly amounted to Kelvari food having too many spices and human food having too few. Your father still hates me, Danny observed one night. Rena sat in a chair beside his bed, her lower hands folded in her lap while her upper hands gestured as she spoke. He does not hate you. He is confused by you. That feels the same to him. What's confusing? You want a marriage challenge, but have not pressed your advantage. You could demand immediate bonding. You could claim rights to house resources. Instead, you asked me about my favorite color. Danny shrugged, which still hurt a little. I didn't fight Dren for political advantages. I fought because the alternative was dying, and then... He paused, trying to find the right words. And then I kept fighting because I wanted to know you. Seemed worth getting beaten half to death for. Rena was quiet for a long moment. No one has ever wanted to know me before. They wanted my title, my bloodline, my combat record, but not me. That's sad. Yes, it was. She reached out with one of her lower hands and rested it on his arm. It is less sad now. Weeks turned into months. Danny's wounds healed into scars that he wore without shame. His courtship of Rena continued in ways that baffled traditional Kelvari observers. He learned her language properly. She learned to appreciate human humor. Though she still did not understand most of the jokes, they argued sometimes. He thought she was too rigid about tradition. She thought he was too casual about danger. But they always found their way back to understanding. Dren approached Danny one afternoon in the station's common area. The warriors still bore faint marks from their battle, though his nose had healed. Human. Danny looked up from his meal. Dren, I have thought much about our fight. Dren sat down across from him without asking permission. I still do not understand how you won. I was too stubborn to lose. That is not a strategy. It is for humans. Dren studied him with four narrowed eyes. You truly have no special abilities? No hidden technology? No combat enhancements? Just regular human stubbornness and a high pain tolerance. Danny pushed his food around his plate. Also, I was very motivated. Dying seemed like a bad option. But surely dying with honor is better than living without it. Danny thought about that. Maybe for Kelvari. For humans, living is usually the goal. We figure out the honor part afterward. Dren considered this strange philosophy. Finally, he stood. You are a strange creature, Danny Reeves. But I think perhaps strangeness is what Rena needed. He paused. If you hurt her, I will tear you apart with all four hands. Fair enough. High Marshal Torvek summoned Danny to his chambers a week later. The room was massive, decorated with weapons and trophies from 100 worlds. Torvek stood before a window overlooking the stars. You have been patient, Torvek said without turning around. Danny stood at attention, or his best guess at Kelvari attention. I've been recovering and learning. Seemed more useful than rushing. My daughter smiles now. She did not smile for years before you arrived. Torvek finally turned. I did not approve of this union. A human and a Kelvari. It will cause political problems for generations. Probably. You do not deny it. No. But I don't think Rena cares about politics. I know I don't. Torvek's expression was unreadable. What do you care about, human? Danny met his eyes without flinching. Making your daughter happy. That's pretty much it. Everything else is details. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Torvek nodded once. The trial courtship is over. You have proven yourself acceptable. The words seemed to pain him. You may proceed with formal bonding preparations. Danny blinked. Really? Do not make me repeat myself. He found Rena on the observation deck, watching ships come and go from the station. His own ship sat in the docking bay, finally fully repaired after all these months. Your father just gave permission for formal bonding, Danny said. Joining her at the window, Rena turned to look at him. I know. He sent me a message first. He wanted me to tell you to leave before he changed his mind. Sound like him. Danny looked at his ship. I could leave. Go back to hauling cargo. Forget any of this happened. You could. Her voice was carefully neutral. But I came here for a replacement valve and ended up finding something better. Rena's lower hands reached for his. Her upper hands rested on his shoulders, pulling him close. You are very strange, she said. Coming from the 7-foot warrior princess with 4 arms, I'll take that as a compliment. For the first time in decades, Rena Kosveth smiled without any weight behind it. Outside the window, the stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there, Danny's old life was waiting. Cargo runs and loneliness and nothing worth fighting for, that he chose to stay. Some things were worth getting beaten half to death for. Some people were worth any price. And sometimes, the best adventures started with walking through the wrong door.